Susan Robbins, and the class that you're watching is Drugs in Society. Hello, class.
Hello.
Hey there. Hello to the home viewers and all of you late-night bird insomniac folks out there who are flipping through channels tonight. We're going to keep you awake because we're going to be talking about drugs and drug treatment today. Our speakers for the class today are Dr. Ronit Elk and Roxy Lasoya, who are both with University of Texas Houston Health Science Center. That's a mouthful every time I've got to say that. University of Texas Houston Health Science Center, and they're in the Department of Psychiatry. And we're going to be doing this in two parts today. The first part, Dr. Elk is going to give an overview of treatment for women who abuse cocaine. And in the second part, Roxy is going to be talking about clinical application. Please welcome Dr. Elk.
Hi. The topic we're going to talk about today is... Okay, can we go to the slide, please? Pregnant women who use cocaine. Now, I know that every time you introduce this topic, everybody has opinions, either you yourselves or people that you know or somebody that you've talked to. What kind of thoughts come to your mind, or anything that comes to your mind when you think of pregnant women who use cocaine? Anything? Or what? Okay, I tell you what, never mind what you think. Forget about what you think. What do other people think? What have you heard people say about that? I couldn't hear, I'm sorry. That they're endangering their baby? What else? Right, that's been said. What else?
That this is done mostly by minority women or lower income women.
Okay, so here, this is sort of, this is describing in some way. What else?
Low birth weight babies.
The babies have low birth weight. What else have you heard?
They don't deserve the baby.
Okay. Good, good, good. What other things?
It's a lapse in the women's morality or values.
Okay. Excellent. Any other thing? Yes?
That they should go to jail, the woman.
Okay. Let's end on that good dramatic note. I think that's good. Look at all the things that you hear, that you've enumerated here, and I can tell you that there's many others, and we're just being polite today because I can assure you that if this was a sort of a more closed audience, you could say many more things. Or if you didn't think that I was listening or somebody else was listening, you could say many more things, which is they have no morals, they don't deserve the baby. People have put it in very, very negative terms. Look at this. Going to jail, is that a positive thing? No. They have no morals? No. They don't deserve the baby? No. Low birth weight? No. Minority income? I don't know. Endangering baby is negative. Where's the positive? And is there anything positive? I mean, is there anything positive? Okay. What I hope to do today is to show you that in actual fact, one of the things that is positive is hope, because there is hope for pregnant women who use cocaine. Even if you think, not you, somebody thinks that these are women who need to go to jail, and in fact there are laws in many states that say that these women should go to jail, and even if you feel that these women have no morals, and even if there are misconceptions that most of the women are minority, lower income, which in actual fact is not true, all of these opinions and all of these misconceptions are not necessarily true, and they don't focus on what's helpful anyway, which is hope. Am I using the right pen? Okay, because there's a thicker one here. Okay.
No, wrong pen.
Wrong. No problem. Got the new one. Okay, so we're going to use this. No problem. We will find other solutions for that one. Anyway, the main word I'd like you to think about is that there is hope. There is hope for the women, and there is hope for the children, and is for you who are going to be therapists or who are going to be social workers who are going to work in the field. I hope to demonstrate that somehow you will learn that there is going to be hope. And what I'm going to do today is just give you a little bit of an overview and a background so you can get familiar with the problem. There is much, much more we could discuss. There isn't time. And then Roxy, who is an extremely skilled therapist who's been working for many years with this population, she can, if you don't believe me, you can hear from Roxy, and she can give you examples and real-life situations. Okay. So can we move to the next slide, please? Oh, we are. This has been called one of the most difficult problems to solve. Cocaine abuse during pregnancy. It's very complex. It's very complicated. It has some of the damaging healthcare problems, and you did talk about, somebody mentioned here the low birth weight. That is one of them, consequences. But guess what? When you talk about prevalence, when you talk about how frequently does it occur, does anybody have any idea how many pregnant women use cocaine? I mean, any idea? It's just like, do you think it's 1% or 100%?
Probably 10%.
10%, okay. I wish I hadn't written on that board, yeah?
Probably less than 1%.
Okay, less than 1%. Okay, so it's a range. Nobody says it's 100%, right? The interesting thing is there have been a zillion studies done, and we still do not know the exact prevalence. And why? Because who are you going to be measuring? When you go to a clinic to measure, can I ask you if you're going to go to a clinic for middle class or wealthy people, or to private docs and ask them, well, excuse me, do you mind if I do a random urine screen and then we'll collect that data? That data never gets collected. You know that. And so they primarily get collected in certain kinds of clinics. And in certain kinds of clinics, you can get certain prevalence rates. And that comes back to the point, who made that point about, what's your name? Tanya. That was a very important point. And what happens is it gets generated and continued, perpetuated by the media, which is, oh, well, we go to this clinic and we found so many babies who are born cocaine positive. That is not so. There are drug positive babies born across the social strata, across groups. It's very important that you remember that, because a lot of times you're going to be targeting somebody and thinking, well, this looks like somebody, she's low income, she's minority, her children look neglected, she's somebody who might be using cocaine. It could be completely wrong. It could be that she's in a very difficult circumstances and her husband's abusing her. I mean, I'm obviously generalizing, but just the same as that can happen, you can have a very upper middle class woman who is secretly at home dying for somebody to help her, but there is nobody who's come out and said to her, Susan or Mary or whatever, do you have a problem? Would you like to discuss it with me? So, coming back to the prevalence, we actually don't know how many women do or do not use. It's some data say 1%, some people say 10%. So all your information is correct. And of course, it depends where. It depends which population you're going to be screening and you're going to be looking at. Okay, the thing about the misconceptions, I think that we talked a little bit about them. There's so many other misconceptions. And if you ask people, where do they get their information on pregnancy and cocaine abuse? Isn't it interesting that the majority of people get from the newspaper? Newspaper! I mean, surely we're supposed to be educated people who do a little bit of reading. I'm not saying newspapers are bad. Of course, read the newspaper. But the newspaper's got the term crack babies, which is the most dangerous term to use. If you label somebody X and that becomes a stigma that you are living with. If you say to me, you're stupid, if you kept saying that to me, guess what? I'm going to start thinking I'm stupid. And then I'm going to start acting like I'm stupid. You're going to treat me like I'm stupid. You're not going to have any hope for me. That term, crack babies, next time you hear somebody saying that, you just tell them that they're wrong. There is no such thing. There are babies who've been born exposed to drugs. There are babies who've been born exposed to alcohol. There are babies who've been born exposed to cigarettes, but they are not crack babies. There is hope. There's a lot of data out there showing that there's a lot that can be done with these, with the babies, and there is hope. If we start thinking about them as hopeless, that there's no cure for them, you're already labeling them. Have you studied about labeling and what does? Okay, so that's very, very important to remember. The stereotyping and labeling, that's it. So if there's anything that I'm going to say today that's important is, please, when you hear that term crack baby, sift through it. You don't have to accept it. You can say to somebody, that's true, these babies have been born exposed to cocaine. However, they have a whole lot of other dimensions. They may not be impaired in this way, they may be impaired in that way. There are a lot of other babies who are born exposed to lots of other drugs and or other problems or live in abusive homes that are who have just as many problems. We don't label them. Go ahead.
It could also be that they are having problems not just because of exposure to cocaine, but because their mother has poor prenatal
Okay,
care.
there's a whole lot of very, very good point. And this is going to be one of the most important elements that we're going to discuss today. Prenatal care, lack of prenatal care, and that's exactly true. A lot of problems that are caused in somebody's, let's say, for example, and this applies to anything, here is the person, and here are the multitude of problems. Well, how do you know if it's due to cocaine use? Let's say this is the cocaine. Or how do you know it's the fact that when I'm using cocaine, I'm not worrying about eating. I couldn't care about eating. So then I have, let's say, whatever, either no food, or I could just eat whatever. Whatever is there, I just grab, or I eat as the mood strikes me, or if somebody has something. Certainly no prenatal care. And there's a whole lot of reasons why people don't get prenatal care, which we'll touch on in a minute. So no prenatal care. Other thing is usually when people are using cocaine, you use other drugs as well. And which other drugs? Not Anne. Not Anne. Okay. Alcohol, what else?
Alcohol.
Cigarettes.
Nicotine.
Cigarettes. Okay. One of the two most dangerous drugs that we have that are the two most dangerous drugs for babies in utero are cigarettes and alcohol. Two legal drugs, I might add. But since this is on TV, we better be careful. But this is the two most dangerous drugs, which is not to say that cocaine is not dangerous. But to come back to our earlier point, I'll just get you in this 1 second, Philip. The point is that you cannot tell if any of the negative consequences are due to the drug and or no eating and or no prenatal care and or living a chaotic lifestyle and or using any other drugs. You had a question?
Don't all these things, though, still center on the responsibility of the mother, whether it's alcohol, cocaine, or not eating properly?
How is it always that we come to the responsibility of the person? Let me ask you this, and you're going to make me digress for 2 minutes, but it's too important. Here is a woman, and here's a pregnant woman. Okay? This pregnant woman has other dimensions to her being other than being a carrier of a baby. Of course, it's very important to be a carrier of a baby. It's also very important for the person who impregnates that person to be responsible for it. Usually a male, although we do have other ways. It's also very important for society to have a responsibility for these women. So, for example, if I stigmatize somebody, if I think these people, whatever you call these people, pregnant women who use cocaine, if I think these people are the most terrible, awful, bad people, why would they bother to come and seek treatment? I mean, let's say you are all nurses and working in the community, and I'm pregnant and I'm using cocaine, and I even sense that you may even have, and I'm not saying that you feel that way, but I may even think that you think, well, you have a responsibility, you damn well better behave yourself or whatever it is. I'm not going to come. I'm not going to come, and I'm not going to see you. I'm not going to get prenatal care. I'm not going to get help, and things are just going to get worse. So what I'm saying is that society does have a responsibility, as do the others. And there's so many things that we need to discuss. Is there any way you can hold your questions for afterwards, or at least just in a few more minutes? I mean, does this at least give you some idea? I guess part of what I'm trying to say is it is not just this one person. Apart from anything else, I don't know how you feel about substance abuse. When people use substances, it's not necessarily because they're sitting there dying to do it or because they have no morals. Well, a lot of times it's a lack of control due to other circumstances, which we'll talk about. Okay. There are certain adverse consequences. Remember I said to you that there are certain adverse consequences of, is there any way that we can show the slide somewhere so I can see it without having to jump? Thank you. Up and down. some of the adverse consequences there are multitude of articles which have looked at them. Remember what we said, it could be due to the cocaine, it could be due to the alcohol, it could be due to lack of prenatal care, low birth weight, premature delivery, premature rupture of membranes, and spontaneous abortions. Those are the 4 that we can more or less guarantee are associated with cocaine use. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily caused by it, but associated. Now, for the women, of course, cocaine use results in lots of other problems as well. That's what we talked about earlier, the poor diet, chaotic lifestyle. Of course, you have the risk of HIV. Do you know that with women, one of the largest group who are starting to contract HIV, primarily because of the exchange of drugs for sex? And if you are craving that drug, then you're going to do anything to get it. Okay. And just to let you know that these are extremely expensive costs for our society. And one of the main reasons is because of lack of prenatal care. And I think Ann mentioned that earlier. Lack of prenatal care. If you can have a group of people in this room, okay, thanks for the slide thing. If you can have a group of people in this room and half of you, and all of you are pregnant, including the males, this is a hypothetical example, and half of you get prenatal care and the other half do not get any prenatal care, the outcome is going to be much, much, much better for those who receive prenatal care, whether you behave well, whether you eat well, whether you exercise regularly, whether you eat cheese, I don't know, whatever. Prenatal care is a very important factor. And remember, we talked about women who are using cocaine, and if in any way there is so much stigma, and in any way they think that you're not going to accept them, then why would they come in for help? Why would they get prenatal care? It's our responsibility as well as it is the women's responsibility to provide prenatal care and to get prenatal care. Okay, so having done that, having identified the problem, then we know what we need to do. We need to find 2 things. We need to find a treatment that'll do 2 things. One is we need to stop cocaine use. So we need to be able to stop cocaine use. And the other thing we need to do is to get them to comply with prenatal care. If we can find a treatment that does both these things, obviously we're going to improve the outcome for the woman, for the baby, for the child, for society. That's what we need to do. And that is what we did in our program, and that's what I want to tell you a little bit about. How do you find out if a treatment's effective? I mean, how do you know? If you were told tomorrow, your homework project is, you have a group of people, irrelevant, just substitute anything for the word you have to find out, you have to design a treatment program that's effective. How would you do it? What is the first thing you would do?
You would interview people that have been through the program and find out if it worked for them.
Okay, so that's people who've been in the program. So you can interview people, or in other words, you find out. Let's just put it like that. You can find out
feedback.
Okay, you can get information by getting feedback. What else?
You could probably look into previously researched projects to see what was effective in the past.
Okay, very, very good. It's very important that you, come on in. You look at what's been done before. I mean, look at this again, this novel concept of reading a book. You read to see what's been done before. Guess what? We are not inventing the wheel. We are really not. We are doing it slightly different. And as I'll talk to you about it today, pregnant women are different. Women are different. Men are different. People are different. Each human being is different. So we do have that, obviously, but there's some information that's already there. So you better make sure you review the literature, you look at it, and you see what's been found effective. It is so surprising to me that even today, in this field of substance abuse primarily, people don't necessarily go with what's been shown to be effective, but what they feel is effective. Well, everybody's entitled to their own feeling. Everybody's entitled to their own feeling, and you can do whatever you want for yourself. But if you are going to do a treatment for other people, you better make sure that that treatment has been shown to be at least effective. Okay. Let's see what we know about cocaine. What do we already know about cocaine? Well, the one thing that we do know already about the treatment of cocaine is it's very, very difficult. It's a very powerful drug. Anybody who tells you differently is telling you incorrectly. It is a drug that is reinforced by animals. It is a drug that's reinforced across species. It is that is reinforcing. It makes people feel a certain way, and therefore people continue to take it. It is not. It is a reinforcer, just like if you're thirsty and you drink a sip of water, that's a reinforcer. That makes me feel reinforced because I was thirsty and I drank it, and it's great. And so the next time I'm thirsty, what am I going to do? Drink some more water. Okay, that's it. Last one. Next one who comes in late can't come in. Come on in. Okay. You know what the most important treatment that's been shown to be effective in cocaine? I think it's going backwards. Behavioral interventions. Does anybody know what behavioral interventions are? I've heard a bit about them. Other than Philip and Anne. Who else? Anyone heard anything about behavioral interventions? Let me just show you a slide of a joke, and then we can go backwards. Oh, we can't go back. Sorry. Forgot. Behavioral interventions. People think that behavioral interventions are cold. People think that behavioral interventions may be mechanistic, like if I tell you to press this button, you'll press that button, and then I'll give you a reward. People think that it's not looking at what's causing drug abuse, but guess what? I hope that when I finish talking today and you hear Roxy and she can show you how that kind of treatment gets implemented, you won't feel that way. Look at the slide that I have there now. Can I point onto the slide here? Can you see me when I point on here? This is a data that's been done by one of my colleagues called Steve Higgins. Steve Higgins is a very nice guy who is working in Vermont. And he wanted to see what could he do for people who are dependent on cocaine. What treatment could he find that's effective? So guess what? He went back and did what we had talked about earlier, which is he looked to see what's been effective before. And he looked in the alcohol literature, and he found that there was some treatment that was very, very helpful. And so what he did was put people into two groups and look to see which is the most effective. Instead of saying, I feel this way, I'll feel that way, he wanted to see which is the most effective. And what you see on this slide here is that these are the people here, and I'll just draw it over here, who had the standard treatment. Standard treatment is primarily 12-step. Both of these were outpatient. And the standard treatment was primarily 12-step. Anybody familiar with that? Okay, so we won't go too much into that. And the other treatment was behavioral, where you teach the person to look at what is your trigger. We're going to come back to that in a minute. What is the trigger? What is setting you off to use? And guess what he found? If you look at this slide that I showed you here, the percentage of people or subjects who were cocaine-free, everybody started by being 50% of the subjects were cocaine-free when they came in. However, over time, this is time in treatment, what you found is that more people were maintained cocaine abstinence in the group that received the behavioral treatment compared to those who received the standard treatment, which is primarily AA. Very few people were cocaine abstinent. Actually, I did this wrong. Very few people were cocaine abstinent in this group, and more people were cocaine abstinent in this group. And guess what? Every time I show this data, someone says, well, excuse me, but, yes, but, yes, but. Of course there's buts. In every study there are buts. However, these findings keep getting shown over and over and over again. And then everybody said, oh, Steve, this only works in Vermont where you have white men. It won't work in my population. Nonsense. It got replicated in other places, and it worked. And then everybody said, oh, well, that only works for short term. As soon as you take away the reinforcer, or as soon as you stop teaching people what to do, then it goes to go back. Not true. It's been shown to be effective long term. Wow, all of a sudden we have something that really works. And it's not all of a sudden. He just went back and looked back at the literature. So behavioral treatments. Now we're going to skip over the cartoon. Let me tell you two or three quick things about behavioral treatments. One is, remember I showed you that the water was a reinforcer. The way behavioral treatment looks at drugs is that it's a reinforcer, so that if you take the drug, it reinforces you, and that's why you take it more. Different people will use for different things. What I'd like to do is ask you for an example. Don't use an example from your own life if you're not comfortable, but nothing to do with drugs. This applies to any behavior. What about if you've ever had a weight problem, or you love chocolates and you just don't want to leave chocolates, or if you said that you were going to exercise every day and you didn't exercise, or I don't know, some other thing that you did. Is there any example anybody would mind sharing? Not from your own life, from anybody else's. Can I give an example then? Last chance? Okay. Let's say, for example, one of the things is, and I know this, I don't eat chocolate because I don't like it, but I know a lot of people who like chocolate. So let's say eating, and you said to yourself, gee, I've got this terrible problem. I'm not going to eat chocolate anymore. I've made my mind up. I'm not going to do it. One of the things that you can find out is that there's a certain trigger that sets it off. What is the trigger? And Roxy will go into that in great detail. Is, for example, in X person's case, it may be because every time she gets into a fight with a boyfriend and he makes her feel bad and terrible, that's when she gets the trigger to eat chocolate. Okay? Somebody else's example. Give me, just think of any kind of example do you think that would set somebody off, or would be like a reminder, a trigger,
Right
a
here,
cue.
going to the refrigerator and seeing the chocolate there, if that's where you
Okay,
keep
so
it.
seeing, that's very good, seeing the chocolate. What else? Shante?
Stress, being stressed from work.
Work stress. Somebody at work saying, you got to finish this, you got to do this, you got to see these 3 clients, you got to see this. Okay, what else?
Stress from studying for tests.
Now, I wonder if this is related.
I think that's pointed at me.
Yes. Test. Okay, stress is a big one, and it could be specific to work or studying. Okay, Tanya?
I was going to say, you might associate it with like going to the movies. Whenever you go to the movies, you're in the habit of eating chocolate. It might be like when you do certain behavior.
So a certain situation. Okay, very good. And I want to stop because I know Roxy's going to be doing a lot of that. And basically what you're doing is, here is you're physically seeing the chocolate. So think about it as, instead of chocolate, substitute drug, or instead of chocolate, substitute anything you want. You see it, so that acts as a trigger. You have worry or stress, something negative, so you have the chocolate and you feel better. You go to movies, which means that is a situation. Think about how many times, anybody who's ever smoked here, you don't have to put up your hands, but anybody who smoked and who stopped smoking, suddenly you're in that same situation. For example, you have a cup of coffee. You haven't smoked for a long time. You have a cup of coffee, and then you remember that you used to smoke a cigarette afterwards. Here's this cup of coffee has brought you so much trouble because it's a trigger. It's acting as a cue for you to smoke. I mean, to eat chocolate, I'm sorry, whatever. And a fight with a boyfriend is under the stress. So basically, you help the person to identify what their particular trigger is. And you'll see Roxy will give you wonderful examples. It can be very, very subtly done. The other thing that you do is you look at whether the person eats the chocolate or doesn't eat the chocolate, uses cocaine or doesn't use cocaine, and what are the positive and the negative consequences. If I ate the chocolate, I felt so good. I felt wonderful. And remember that these things are individual. Like, as I said, I don't like chocolate. I would not feel good, but I might like salty things, and you may think, ugh, that's awful. Whatever it is, the positive thing for that particular person. The negative thing may be, drat, I've put on 2 pounds. I don't know, that doesn't look like anybody has that problem here, but there may be other things, like you get a hole in your tooth or something. I don't know what else chocolate does, it's negative, but there are positive and negative consequences. And so what we do in treatment is to help the person identify this. We help them to identify what the positive and negative consequences are, and then we reinforce anything where they do not do drugs. So you reinforce, you make a person feel good about when they do not use drugs. That's very, very oversimplified, but that's all we have time for in terms of what we do in behavioral treatments. And that's the same type of treatment that I told you that Steve Higgins used in his population. And that's the same kind of treatment that you can adapt to pregnant women. Okay? So what do we know about therapy and therapy for pregnant women? Well, one of the things that we know is that most treatment models actually have been adapted for men. And in many ways, there are many things that are very similar between men and women. After all, we're all human beings. However, just like each one of us is unique, there are many differences between men and women. And some of the programs may fail to look at gender differences, just like many programs don't look at ethnic differences. There are differences. And one of the things that's been found is one of the best ways of getting women into treatment is to provide women-sensitive programs. Just like if I came from a culture where we just spoke X language, I would feel more comfortable coming to a place where I knew that you spoke X or you understood X. But if everybody there was Y and I was the only X, it doesn't make you feel so wonderful. So that's very, very important to understand. What are some of the very important things that you need to know for drug-dependent women? First of all, you cannot have a program that's coercive, and you cannot have a program that's punitive. So if the person walks in and say, listen here, I will not put up with this, this is a terrible thing that you're doing to your child, you have lost the person right there. Now, you may want to lose the person if you're a police officer or if you're a judge, you want to put them in jail, that's fine. But as therapists, that is not your role. Your role is to try and get the woman to come into treatment. The other thing is you have to be respectful. And I don't mean that people shouldn't have responsibility for their behavior, but you have to be respectful, which is also using supportive approaches and empowering approaches. In other words, you make the person feel like she has the power to change her own behavior. If somebody feels that they have the power to change their own behavior, remember we talked about the triggers, the cues that set off the drug use. If you teach her how to not use under difficult circumstances, fantastic. She'll be able to do it, and she'll feel good about herself. So you have to empower her. Confidentiality is very, very important. Remember that cocaine is an illegal drug, and if I think that, if I think that you may report me or you may tell me about me to the CPS or to the police or so on, that is a very big risk. You are not going to see me again. And it's very important, just like if you're treating women, surely you've got to have women staff members, and you better have women staff members in senior positions too. Otherwise, what are we telling women? You can only be, I don't know, I don't want to judge. You can only be X. You can only get to this level, but the big people on top are going to be the guys. It's exactly the same as if you're a minority person. You can't go to a place where all the minority people are over here and all the head honchos are non-minorities. It's exactly the same as if everyone's got green eyes, all the green-eyed people are at the bottom, and all the blue-eyed people are at the top. And meantime, everybody has green eyes. It's very, very important. I'm making it sort of I'm simplifying it, but the principle is to let people know that they can get to any position that they want. They can be empowered. And just like she is a woman, the pregnant woman, so is somebody, for example, like myself, who's the head of a clinic. I am a woman. It's easy to identify. It's the same thing, not anybody different. The other thing is, if you're going to be dealing with pregnant women, you cannot only focus on cocaine use. That is one aspect of the treatment, and we're going to talk a bit more about that, but that's just one aspect of the treatment. There are a whole lot of other things. Remember, you have medical problems, you have social problems. For example, maybe you have a lot of kids, you have nowhere to keep your kids, maybe you're running out of a job, maybe you're being physically abused, very common. a whole lot of others. So you better make sure that you're able to deal with all these other multitude of problems, including having a whole lot of referral services. If somebody arrives on your doorstep and she doesn't have a place to stay, well, it's all very well talking about philosophy and morality and all that. If somebody doesn't have a place to stay, you better find her a place to stay or help her find a place to stay that night. And she and her kids. Or if she doesn't have food. What about transportation? Has anyone ever been pregnant and or had a broken leg and or had any kind of illness? Going through Houston on 2 or 3 buses to get to the medical center is out of the question. No one's going to do it. I mean, they may do it once or twice, but if you don't provide transportation for me and I'm sitting here this pregnant and I have 2 or 3 other kids, how do you expect me to come? Similarly with childcare, I am fascinated how people do not provide childcare when you have treatment for women. How can you have a facility where you are treating women, and women at the moment are the primary caretakers of children, without having childcare? It's like saying, okay, here's a building and there's no bathroom. You want to go to the bathroom? Too bad, go in the bushes. You have to provide childcare. I mean, these are very basic things, and it's just, the reason I get so upset is because I've had to fight so hard to get these things instituted, which I think should be basic. Teaching people how to be good parents, because many of the women do want to be good parents, and sometimes, guess what? We don't know how to do it. It's not because I'm stupid. I just don't know. I had terrible parents, or I was abused, or whatever. I have no idea. So if you're going to teach me and help me, that's wonderful. I want my children to have an opportunity. And finally, you better provide all those treatments in one place. There is no use saying, okay, I tell you what, Judith, you go for your prenatal appointment over there, and on Wednesday, Shantae, I want you to go to the doctor over there, and then the parenting class is over here. Forget it. You have it all in one place. And that already, and then all the staff know each other, and then you work as a team together. That will help the people to, the women to keep coming in. Okay. We talked about the pregnancy and a lot of the stigma and the fear and so on, so I don't think we need to emphasize it. Okay, what I'd like to tell you about, how much time do we have? 30 minutes? Okay, so we have plenty of time, thank you. What I want to tell you is what we did, what we at the University of Texas, the Pregnancy Project, did in order to apply all these principles which I told you about women, about pregnant women, about behavioral treatments, about cocaine abuse. How did we put it all together, and how effective were we? How effective were we? Okay, we had everything at one place. Remember I told you the one-stop shopping? Everything. We had the prenatal care in one place. We had the drug abuse counseling in one place. We had everything in one place, in one clinic. The atmosphere was very supportive, especially the first day. If I'm pregnant and I'm using cocaine and I am terrified and I finally have the guts to come in to the clinic, and Shantae is the first person I see, and she's rude to me, you can forget it, I'm going. But if she says to me, come on in, how are you doing? I'm Shantae, please have a seat. Are you thirsty or whatever? Just normal, natural, to make the person feel comfortable, then I'm going to be, oh, okay, she doesn't seem like she's angry with me. And that's something that the women said over and over and over. I didn't feel like I was being judged. I didn't feel like I was, people were angry with me. And I mean, it was interesting to hear them say, even the doctor was so nice. Even the doctor was so nice. What do you think doctors are? They're human beings. But it was so important for the women to feel that even the doctor was so nice. Confidentiality, because ours is a research program, obviously confidentiality is absolutely fundamental. We can go into that some other time. We do have women staff and leaders, naturally. Never mind. And then we talked about some of the behavioral-based. I'm just saying it because we know to be a very women-empowering program. And sometimes people like it, and sometimes people don't, depending on which side of the fence you're on. Oh, and this is some of our team meetings. It was from, this was, I mean, this is how all the meetings are held, where everybody discusses the whole team, the research team, the clinical team, the lab team, etc. Oh, this is I just thought this was just a happy, happy photograph. The team members are just, there's a very good feeling, and this was just at some community thing that we did, and I thought that was just happy, just to show you about. What's funny? I can get it. I'm happy. I know, it's nice because like I'm serious and our program's serious and we have a lot of things that we're trying to accomplish, but we can also feel good about it. Transportation and childcare, of course, we had to provide that. And let me tell you, it is not easy. Getting a van, okay, all you need is money, and getting somebody to drive, it's again money. But it is a real problem. Houston's enormous. So this one is over here, and that one is over there, and that one has prenatal care, and that one's baby has to be here, and that one's sick. I mean, it is a real headache. And I tell you, the staff who took care of it, it is fantastic. So although on paper it looks easy, it is not. A simple thing like that can be very difficult to accomplish, but if you remember what it's for and how essential it is, you have to provide it. And of course, we have childcare. I'll show you pictures of the childcare room, of which we are very, very proud. We have different classes where the women are, when they're all together, talking about parenting, nutrition. Nutrition turns out to be extremely important when you're pregnant. Other things like HIV counseling. As I told you, that women and substance abuse, very, very closely linked with HIV, very high risk. And if I become HIV positive, there's a very strong chance that my baby will become HIV positive and so on. There's wonderful medication now at last, but instead of having treatment, we have to try and prevent. And so there's a lot of those kind of classes going on. Somebody asked me the other day, that, what, is there such a thing as a female condom? I was surprised. Guess what? There is. There's a male condom, of which I think everybody knows, and there's also a female condom. And part of what's important about that is you don't have to wait for somebody else to do something. You can do something yourself. We won't go into a whole lot of detail on that, but it is another way of empowering women to use something and not saying to somebody else, could you please put on a condom, and then getting into the whole macho attitude of what do you mean and why would I need to and I don't have anybody else and so on. Okay. There's another thing that we do for the women. When the women have delivered, a therapist goes to visit the women and gives them a gift. This is not a functional gift. This is not like something like, I don't know, baby milk or something. This is not a gift that's to do with, well, because you were clean the whole time or you were able to achieve it. It's not dependent on anything. You had a baby. Either the baby was born or something bad happened to the baby. You kept the baby or you gave it up for adoption. It doesn't matter. It's unconditional. And for many of the women, this was the gift, the first time that ever had an unconditional gift in their life. And you can ask Roxy. Everybody wants to go and give the gift and see the woman. And then we also have a postpartum program. Oh, this is just our van to show you. We do have a van, and I mean, as difficult as it is, it's very, very essential. Childcare room. When you provide childcare room, please do not make a room in which all the pictures are of blonde, blue-eyed babies. Guess what? The world is not composed of blonde, blue-eyed children. I have nothing against blonde, blue-eyed people. It's just that we're a multicultural society. So you make sure that all of that is reflected, including in your books, including in the toys, including in not having all these, I won't go into Barbie dolls, forget it. But you must make sure that all these aspects are taken care of. And that's what I was saying. We're so proud of this room. If I had to tell you how difficult it was to get this room established and how proud we were and how much joy there was in being able to say to the kids, instead of sitting in a clinic and saying, sit still, sit still. What? How can you sit still? Come and play. Would you like to play with this? Would you like to experience that? Would you like to paint? Would you like to draw? Would you like to play with a car? Wow, you have a whole bunch of different children. Oh, and then, of course, that's our prenatal care. And the behavioral interventions I did tell you a little bit about, and Roxy will tell you about it more. One of the things that we do that I just want to touch on very quickly is we have what's called urine screens. How do you know if somebody's not using drugs? How do you know if somebody's using drugs or not? I mean, what ways would you know? Ask them. You ask them, feedback. What else? Right, the urine screen. Surprise! I mean, I'm not sure why, but many drug clinics don't do that. How would you know if somebody's using or not if you didn't look at the results? It's almost like saying, I just can't even think of an example. It's so basic. It's just a way of looking to see if the person is or isn't using the drugs. And what you do is you give the person immediate feedback. Let me show you how it is. This is we have little sheets of paper that a person gets. By the way, we never use the patient's name in any of our information ever. The patients know this. They all get given a number. And when you're not doing a research study, please feel free to use patient's name. When you're doing a research study, do not ever use a person's name. So everybody has a number. I think this is a hypothetical number, 1111. And it just says, today your urine sample was cocaine negative. That means while I'm sitting there in therapy with Roxy, I get this piece of paper under the door that says your urine screen was cocaine negative. Yes, I can feel fantastic about it. You can ask Roxy how people are walking around with these little pieces of paper saying, I was cocaine negative. Can you imagine? I am a pregnant woman. I am a woman who has all this responsibility and all this load on her, and I've been using cocaine, and yet I was able to be negative. I mean, can you imagine the sense of pride that you feel in that? The other thing is, and Roxy will go into this again, this is somebody's results over time. This is the week that she's in. This is the first week when she came in. This is week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Look at the column that says C. C is for cocaine. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. That means she never, ever, ever used cocaine, and she met the criteria. Obviously, I'm showing you a good example. There are other examples where people, they come in clean, or they use one time and then they didn't use. But it's important to know it's not a black or a white. There is gray. Sometimes people use, sometimes not. If somebody sees this and they feel about themselves, I didn't use, I didn't use, I didn't use, I didn't use, I had a slip, I didn't use, I didn't use, I didn't use, fantastic. Over time, you are reminded about how well you are doing. Okay. I do want to spend a few minutes talking about research, and it's really very interesting because a lot of times clinicians feel like, I don't want to hear about research. It's so boring. It's so dry. Oh, my goodness, is she going to come up with statistics? I can't stand it. Believe me, I've done this before, and I know that I mean, even if you say, no, not me, I'm different, clinicians do feel that way. And let me tell you that researchers, a lot of times academic researchers, they think, well, we know it all. We know it all. I don't need to ask the clinicians what they find out. It is so wrong. The best way is for researchers to learn from clinicians and clinicians to learn from researchers. That's why I have this joint arrow. I mean, this way and that way. What is our end goal? To make everybody feel good about themselves? Well, I'm so clever, or I'm such a good clinician. The end goal is to find effective treatments. And that's why I love this opportunity of working with people who are working clinicians, but who can also understand I can learn from, and who can learn from me about why research and clinical work can go hand in hand. And so I do want to tell you a little bit about our study. And don't worry about looking at that slide. Remember I told you that we had this baseline treatment, which was woman sensitive, which was doing that the behaviorally based drug counseling. Let me just call it ABCs for now, and just remember that it's going to be called ABCs, and Roxy will explain it. But just for now, ABC stands for behavioral treatment. It has the van. This is a van, in case you didn't know. It has the child care. It has all of that. What we wanted to do was this. If we take this basic treatment, which is supposed to be so wonderful, I mean, I've just told you how wonderful it is, and we add something to it. We add reinforcers contingently. Contingent simply means if you do X, I will reward you for Y. If you do X, I will reward you for, I will reward you for doing it. Will that make the outcome better? And it's very interesting how people do treatment. They say, oh, it works really well. Well, okay, then how many of your patients stayed in treatment? Well, I don't have that data. How many of the patients were abstinent from cocaine, if cocaine's a problem? Oh, Mary was. No, I understand that you have individual people. Tell me overall, how many people were absent from cocaine? They don't know. How many women did very, very well prenatally? How many babies were born impaired? Don't know. It's very important that you have measures to outcome, to measure outcome. And so what we wanted to ask is, if we do this baseline treatment and we reinforce something contingent, and I'll explain to you what we'll reinforce in a minute, does it improve outcome in terms of retention, decreasing cocaine use, complying with prenatal care? Remember we talked about earlier that if you can comply with prenatal care and you can decrease cocaine use, you're going to improve outcome. So what did we do? We had 3 treatment groups. One treatment group got this wonderful baseline treatment, this whole big stuff that I talked to you about, the whole bag. Now, please don't all fall asleep. I can assure you it'll be a little bit exciting, okay? So the one group got all the goodies. Let's just call it all the goodies. This group got all the goodies, but in addition to that, we did this. I said, we wrote a contract with the patients, and it said, every time you provide a cocaine-free urine, and you're going to give 3 urines per week. You come in on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and every time your urine screen is cocaine negative, you will get a reinforcer. In our particular case, we used money. In other people's studies, they've used lots of other things. For example, you can use tokens. You can use privileges, vouchers. That's what Steve Higgins used. There's lots of different, because it was a research program, we used money. Money is a very potent reinforcer in our society. Maybe if you were living in Nepal right up on the mountains, nobody cares about the money. What they do care about is having air to breathe and water to drink and food to eat. But in our society, money is a very potent reinforcer. So we wanted to demonstrate whether this would work or not. We wanted to find out, and that's why we used a reinforcer that was potent. So this group here got all the treatment, exactly the same, all the goodies, and so did this group. This group here, every day, every 3 times a week, they got their urine screen results back. You were positive or negative, positive or negative. So they got told how they were doing. They knew exactly how they were doing. But this group here also got reinforced. If you were cocaine negative, you got a certain amount of money. I can't remember. Let's say it's $15. Everybody always wants to know, what's the difference, what the amount is? You can actually make it $2 or $1 or 50 cents. I don't know. You can give a gold star. The point is it was a reinforcer. That's the point. And every time you're cocaine negative, you can get a certain amount. But in addition to that, if you are cocaine negative on Monday and Wednesday and Friday, Wednesday you see Roxy, Friday you see Roxy, and Monday you see the OB-GYN, you get your prenatal care, I will give you extra money, just an extra bonus. And what does that do? That reinforces both cocaine negative urines and going to see the doc, so prenatal care. So that's what we're trying to do, is to reinforce prenatal care and cocaine abstinence. In this group, we did something slightly different. Don't worry about it. But basically, we called it, it's not necessary, but to go into it. Basically, one group got additional contingency management interventions. Everybody has to have fancy labels. If you have a fancy label, people think you're so smart. It's nonsense. It's just reinforces. You reinforce a certain behavior. Okay, so that's what we did. We looked at the 3 treatment groups, and then we wanted to look at outcome. And remember I said you can measure outcome in lots of different ways. One is, let's compare between the groups whether the one group stayed in treatment longer and the other group did not. I'll show you the results, and you judge for yourself. The other thing we can look at is cocaine abstinence. Was one group more abstinent from cocaine than the other? You can look at the results. Did the one group comply more with prenatal care? And what was the perinatal outcome between the groups? If we can show that this one group did better on this, 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 and this, what have we done? We have shown a more effective treatment. Okay, so let's look at our results. Now, I'm not sure if you can see the slides. Basically, let me describe the population to you first. Who we had. We had half of the patients were African American, but the other half were not. And that again comes back to the point of, it's not necessarily that there are more African Americans who are using cocaine here, but maybe this is the group who came to us. Nevertheless, half our patients were from other groups. At least a third were Caucasian. Other thing, half had less than high school, and the other half had more than a high school education. Maybe you didn't expect that. Maybe you thought most of the people just had never been to school or didn't have university degrees. Not so.
Ronit, were these combination of crack and powder cocaine users?
Yes, primarily in this group were primarily crack. There were a few using powder cocaine, but primarily crack. Good question. Again, now, who are these women? Gravida means number of pregnancies I'm terribly sorry, it's not a terribly wonderful slide, but you can see that at least half the people had had between 2 to 4 pregnancies. So this is not the first pregnancy for most of the women. This is not the first pregnancy. If you look at what trimester they came in, if you divide pregnancy approximately into 3 trimesters, you really want people to come in the first trimester, because that's when you can do the most. However, what people always think is, oh, well, those women who use cocaine, they'll never come in. They'll only come in right at the end at labor and delivery. You ask any of your friends who are nurses or docs who work in ER, emergency rooms, and they'll all say to you, oh, they only come in the 3rd trimester, or they come just when they're delivering. Well, look at that. 3/4 of them were in their 2nd trimester. So they didn't come in their 1st trimester. A few did, but a whole lot came in their 2nd trimester. There's still time to do a lot. Most of them had been using for more than 1 year. Very, very few people had used. This blue is using less than 1 year. So these are people who've been using cocaine for a long time. So you can say, oh, well, one way of looking at it is these are hardcore people. There's nothing you can do for them. Remember to come back to that term, hope, that we said the first right in the beginning. But look what's very, very interesting. A large proportion had not used in the last 14 days, in the last 2 weeks. They had stopped using before they came to see us. And actually, we have other data to show that there are a whole lot of women who stop using cocaine on their own. Believe it or not. Remember we talked about misconceptions in the beginning? There are a whole lot of women who stop using even cocaine, if you can think that's the most addictive drug, on their own. Remember that. Remember that and tell that to all your friends and relatives who tell you that it's hopeless and there's no use. Okay.
Bernadette, one of the things that I've tried to really stress in here is that stopping use is not the problem, it's staying stopped.
Yes, well, in this particular study, we looked at stopping use and remaining stopped during the time you were in study, and then we'll do follow-ups to see how they're doing. So absolutely, absolutely. Our first challenge was to get people off this time. Your point is valid. These are the 3 treatment groups. Okay, remember I said that there were 3 treatment groups? This is the one that got all the goodies, the blue here, and the red is the one that got reinforced. So they got the extra reinforcement for doing certain things. And this is all the groups together. You don't have to worry about the green one for right now. And what you can see is that as long as people were in study, overall, there was very, very good compliance with prenatal visits. So, with no differences between the 2 groups. So in other words, if you can keep women in the program, you can get them to comply with prenatal care. And remember what we talked about, good prenatal care, good outcome. And that again comes back to the non-judgmental attitude and so on. Look, look at this. This is something very interesting. We followed up the women who dropped out of treatment. There were some women who came in, who signed up, who saw Shantae. She said, okay, you can come into the program, but the next day they felt guilty, bad, I don't know, terrible, frightened, and they never came back. And we were able to follow them up and see how they're doing. And look at this. Those who dropped out after just coming in, those who dropped out, less than 2 prenatal visits. Less than 2 prenatal visits. Whereas those who came in had had many, many more prenatal visits. Again, it's showing how important remaining in treatment is. If you call success 100% cocaine-free, absolutely 100% cocaine-free, and that's a very, very unusual definition, what you can see is this group here, Group C, that just got all the goodies. This is the Group C, and this is Group A. This is the control. They got all the goodies. Look at this. Far fewer of them had 100% cocaine-free. More in this group. This is a group that also got reinforced, the green group. So the groups that got reinforced did much better than the group that did not in terms of cocaine abstinence, which means that the contingencies worked. For reinforcing them for cocaine abstinent, there were more people who were cocaine abstinent when they were reinforced. If you look at treatment failure on the other extreme, okay, never, ever, ever were clean. Never, ever, ever. Look at that. The control group, the group that got all the goodies, there were many, many more of them who had never cleaned up compared to those who got all the goodies plus the CMIs, who got the reinforced. So We've already shown that they can be, there'll be those who remain in treatment will do better. We show here that those who got reinforced for being abstinent did better. And this is a terrible, terrible slide. I'm really sorry. But if you look at the risk factors, one of the things that you can see is a high bar over here under admissions to NICU, neonatal intensive care unit. One of the highest costs to this country from this problem is people who are being admitted to neonatal ICUs. Look how much higher it is in the control group. Much, much higher. And some of our other studies where we have more data shows that over and over and over again. Women who receive good prenatal care, and higher levels of prenatal care, much, much lower. Thank you. Thank you. Much, much lower perinatal risk factors. So for those people who say to you, well, that's what I really care about is the baby, and let's face it, most people really care about the babies and the good outcome, and that's good. You also want that to happen. You want there to be good outcome. What you can see is that there's a very much lower rate of admissions to NICU, to the neonatal ICU, in the groups who received the reinforcement.
Ronit, can you talk a little bit about how you get your clients?
Yes. How?
How do they come?
Huh?
Roxy was going to do that? Okay.
Oh,
It'll come in the second half.
Okay, that'll come in the second half. Anyway, all I wanted to say was that these slides would show results, would show bar graphs, would show color slides, would show sort of, oh, boring numbers. They're not just boring numbers. They are actually measuring whether treatment is effective or not. You can measure treatment effectiveness by knowing, I have helped this person here. But you can also measure treatment effectiveness by looking at lots of other people, looking at overall, how did they do? And I guess part of why I like ending on a happy note is because happy babies, happy children, happy mothers. I mean, that's what it's all about. And I guess the message I'd like to leave you all with is hope. And there's a very, very nice letter that somebody wrote, and she's given us permission to use it. And if you allow me, I'll just read it. And all my life, I felt like a loser. People who knew me called me a drug abuser. Yes, indeed, at what time, that's what I was. But today I get a natural buzz. A buzz for the bright green trees and the beautiful blue seas. Today, I'm not a loser. I'm happy, clean, and free because that's the way God intended me to be. And it's very, very important that we remember this. And this is my favorite slide. This is the daughter of one of our staff members, and I absolutely think it's the most beautiful, happy picture. So I'd like to end on that and then open it up for questions. Before you all fall asleep. No questions? Everything's completely clear?
I'm dying to know about that middle group and the treatment that they got that you didn't tell us about.
Yeah, the reason I didn't tell you about this group is because what we did was something slightly different. And we don't have enough results yet to see whether there was a difference between this group or not. This was the control group who got all the goodies. This group got reinforced for being cocaine abstinent. And what we did in this group is reinforce them for being cocaine abstinent also. But there is a premise that it's very difficult to be cocaine abstinent. From today to tomorrow to be abstinent. Well, you're going to still find cocaine in my urine for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. So what we did is say this. Every time you decrease in the amount of cocaine that you use, then we will reinforce you. Let's say it's X. And if you are completely cocaine-free, you will get more X. Okay, and so basically it's sort of doing a step-by-step. It's just sort of like reinforcing somebody instead of saying, okay, when you lose 100 pounds, come to me and I'll give you $1,000. Wow. Or when you get, sorry, bad example. When you get A's in all your exams, every single one of your exams, I will give you $1,000. That's one way of doing it, and that's a way of doing it. Another way of doing it is saying, you get an A, you can get, I don't know, you can be exempt from the next exam. Or you can get A, there you are, some people like that idea. Or you can get an A, and I will give you a whole month of groceries free. A whole month of groceries. I mean, just for one A. And for the next A, you will get more. And for the next A, you'll get more. So you're basically trying to shape a behavior until you actually attain what it is that you want. It's a very, very good principle. I'm not sure we were absolutely able to achieve it.
So if I'm understanding this, rather than total abstinence, lesser use or less use is what you rewarded?
We try to do both. We try to do both, which is so that if you used less each time, then you were reinforced for it. But if you were cocaine-free, completely cocaine negative, you got more. So it was more of an incentive to be cocaine absent. For example, if I said, if you get a B, you will get, I don't know, lettuce. You know, I'm kidding. 2 lettuces. But if you get A, if you get all your grades will be A, I mean, for this exam you get an A, you will get a whole salad. So that's the difference. And lettuce and salad may not be the most reinforcing thing in the world, but you get my example. Other questions? Philip.
Your program seems to work exclusively with positive reinforcement, am I right?
What do you mean by exclusively?
Aren't there people that respond better to negative reinforcers than positive?
Negative reinforcers meaning something negative, like
Yes,
punishes?
for instance, instead of a positive reinforcement, if that means nothing to them, don't some people respond to punishment better than reinforcement?
What do you think?
I think that people are individuals, and you will have people that do that.
Okay. Anybody, before I answer Philip's question, does anybody else have an opinion? I mean, just off the top of your head. Krista?
I think most people would prefer positive over negative. I mean, if negative is all they're used to getting, but if they can get the money over getting CPS call, they're going to go for the money. They're going to try it anyway. Whether they succeed or not, they're going to try the positive. Okay,
so can I just use your example, because I think that's very good. We're talking about positive and negative. Actually, the term isn't negative reinforcers, it's punishers, but never mind. I think it's a good idea to talk about it this way. So what did you say? The positive was reinforcer was, let's say, the money. And Roxy can tell you what the women use the money for. You may be surprised. It was not for drugs. And the negative was, let's say, oh, I hope nobody gets upset, but let's say having the police called in. And I have nothing against the police, but something negative, okay? The law. What other opinions does anybody have about what Philip said?
That's like equating whether they will comply with using scare tactics. Scare tactics, to me, when you look at the negative form of punishment, then it's like you're not teaching them. I don't know, it's like using scare tactics.
Okay.
That's what it equates to.
Roxy has something.
Say it again.
The other thing that I think we need, what do I press down?
I got it.
You got it. Traditionally, in 12-step programs or the programs that were initially developed for men, that was the approach that was used was punishment or negative reinforcers or whatever you want to call it. And what they found out was that that did not work with women. That women were less likely to stay in treatment. They were less likely to comply with treatment. Punishment, for whatever reason, doesn't work with women. I know I wouldn't like it. So that is one of the reasons why we started, well, when Dr. Elk started researching this whole project, she looked into treatments that worked and did not work for women, and they found out that punishment does not work for women. That the models that they were using based on male populations did not work for women.
Well, this is good. People are talking. Yes, Sue.
First of all, I don't think you'd get the clients if you're going to do punishment. Well, that's one thing. I think they wouldn't.
So people wouldn't come in.
They wouldn't volunteer, unless you had to. And the other thing is, if you're going to punish somebody, you're telling them you won't succeed unless I have to punish you. So you're not going to succeed, and I have to intervene and I have to punish you to succeed instead of saying you're worth something and you're worth a positive reinforcement.
Does anybody agree with Philip that there may be something positive in doing something negative? Okay. Actually, this is good, and I'm sorry, Philip, but
let
you
me
do. Wait a minute.
give you an
Wait,
example.
you asked a
of
question? Okay, go ahead.
Let me give you an example of a negative of punishment that works. you will get a ticket if you run a red light. That's a punishment. So most people don't do it. That works.
Okay, two things I want to tell you. First of all, we are not talking about people running red lights here. We're talking about people who have problems. And perhaps I didn't make that clear. We are talking about somebody who, think about it. I'm a pregnant, wait.
We're talking shaping behavior.
No, but we are talking about shaping the behavior of a person with a problem. I am a person who's coming to you. No getting huffy, you have to listen. I am a person who's coming to you, and I have a problem. I am coming to you as a help. I don't know where you work. It doesn't matter, because you are a therapist, you're a counselor, you're a social worker. I am coming to you with a problem. I am not coming to you as just somebody on the street. I am not coming to you to buy something from the grocery store. I am coming to you as somebody with a problem. And so you are here in the position of not a police officer to giving a ticket for a red light. Of course you can do that. Of course you can do that. But is it going to be effective? Is it going to be effective? And it's very good that the people in the room were all talking. I love that, because it means you had feelings about it. Actually, if you look at the literature, there are lots of studies that have looked at positive things and that have looked at negative things. There are both ways of doing it. And guess what? You hardly have to be a genius. I mean, you don't even have to look at the studies for that. It's exactly right. The people do not come into treatment, and they drop out of treatment. So it doesn't work. It just doesn't work in this particular instance. And as Roxy said, it doesn't work with women. It doesn't work with a lot of things for men too. It doesn't necessarily work under these circumstances. And if I've given you the impression that all you do is say good, 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 and no negative consequences, not at all. When Roxy talks about the negative consequences of using, people are taught to look at what those consequences are in their own lives. But it's not like the therapist will say, oh, you had a positive cocaine screen, bad person. Why would I even come and see you if you said that?
The other problem with using punishment is that while punishment might work on people who are drug-free and rational and have rational capability because they are drug-free, when people are high on coke, they probably don't care about the punishment. And when they're making a decision to use, they probably don't care.
Right, at that moment, probably not. Yes. What you want to do, we only have 3 minutes left, so let me just add it on a very positive note. What you want to do, if you are treating people with any problems, and I don't know what kind of work you're in, Philip, but I certainly hope that you're in helping people, because if you are, what you want to do is you want to get people into treatment. As Sue said, you're not going to get people to come in. So in order to get people to come in, you have to be non-judgmental. You have to get them to come in. You have to open that door a little bit. It is very, very frightening to be pregnant using cocaine and knowing that the whole world's against you. It is very frightening. So you better make sure you have that door open in whatever way. And then once the person starts coming in, then you use whatever is effective. And we talked about how you determine whatever is effective to make sure that the person uses no cocaine and that the person complies with prenatal care. Yes, prenatal care. If you do those two things, what you are going to cause, what you are going to result in is a positive outcome. If you have a positive outcome in the woman's psychological health, her physical health, the baby's health, society will be happy. And it's not easy. I'm not saying that everything's easy. I have presented it rather simply here, but that's the message I want to leave you with. Any other questions? Linda. It's got to be positive.
It would seem to me that if you were going to spend money in either direction, that you would pick a positive approach and one that's proactive, that's prevention-based, because your outcome is going to meet the need more than a negative approach.
Sorry, Philip, you were outvoted. Okay, and I think that we probably need to wrap it up, and I'll be glad to, in the intermission, talk to anybody about it.
We have a couple of time for one more question.
I'd like to end on something positive, really positive. Anybody has something positive to say, go ahead. Here's your chance. Anne?
I think I agree with what Linda said. I mean, we've seen that all these prisons that we're building and the punitive actions and the police, law enforcement going after street peddlers and everything, it's not working. Prevention is better than cure. We spend far more money in building these prisons and enforcing, stopping drugs coming into this country than in prevention. that's where our money should go.
That would be great. I hope that we don't get a million people watching this program who are police officers and law enforcement officers who get mad. Not at all. There's a place for everybody, but not necessarily in terms of treatment and not necessarily in terms of prevention. And thank you for bringing up that point, Linda. Thank you. And